The possession of David Glatzel, the devil made me do it case, an 11-year-old boy met something evil in an empty house. What followed led to the most controversial murder trial in American history. Late summer in 1980 brings an 11-year-old boy named David Glatzel to a rental property in Brookfield, Connecticut. He accompanies his older sister Debbie and her fiancée Aunt Cheyenne Johnson to inspect what might become their new home. The house sits quiet in the fading afternoon light. David wanders through empty rooms while the adults discuss lease terms and move-in dates. In one of the upstairs bedrooms, he stops. Something watches him from the shadows. An old man stands there, draped in a black robe. His face appears bone white. His eyes glow with a light that does not belong to anything living. David says nothing. He tells no one what he sees. He leaves the room. That night, he wakes screaming. The terror that pours from David in those midnight hours shakes the entire Glatzel household. He describes the old man again, but now with details that turn his mother's blood cold. Cloven hooves where feet should be, a horned head emerging from the hood of the black robe, teeth like fangs filling a mouth that smiled at him in the darkness. The figure spoke to him, David insists through tears and gasping breaths. It told him it would have his soul. His family gathers around him, offers comfort, speaks the language of nightmares and childhood fears. They assure him it was only a dream. Within 3 days, every member of the household understands that what David encountered was not a dream. Something followed him home from that empty house. Something now lives inside him. The changes come rapidly and without mercy. David stops sleeping through the night. His appetite vanishes. When he does eat, he vomits. His personality fractures and reforms into something his family does not recognize. He speaks in voices that do not belong to a child from Connecticut in 1980. He speaks in voices that do not sound human at all. The first levitation occurs less than a week after the initial nightmares. David rises from his bed while sleeping, his body suspended in midair, held by forces no one can see or explain. His mother rushes to pull him down. He weighs nothing in her arms, as if gravity has released its claim on him. When he wakes, he remembers nothing. When he sleeps again, it happens again. The episodes escalate in frequency and intensity. David begins speaking Latin phrases during his waking hours. The Glatzel family contacts their parish priest, who arrives to find the boy reciting passages associated with demonic ritual, words no 11-year-old should know, words that have not been spoken in common language for centuries. The priest recognizes them immediately. His face goes pale. He makes phone calls. He contacts the diocese. He mentions 2 names that carry weight in cases like this, Ed and Lorraine Warren. The physical manifestations grow more violent. David's body contorts during episodes into positions that medical professionals later state are impossible without severe injury or skeletal damage. His spine arcs backward until his head nearly touches his heels. His limbs twist at angles that should dislocate joints and tear ligaments. When the episodes pass, David shows no signs of injury. His bones remain intact. His muscles show no strain. During the possessions themselves, his strength becomes superhuman. Multiple adults are required to hold him down, to keep him from injuring himself or others. A child who weighs perhaps 80 pounds fights with the power of 3 grown men. Objects move in David's presence without physical contact. Furniture slides across rooms. Pictures fall from walls. Doors slam with enough force to crack their frames. The phenomena occur most violently during the episodes when David speaks in the voices, when his eyes roll back until only white remains visible, when something else looks out from behind his face. The voices identify themselves. They give names that those present recognize from Catholic demonology. They speak as multiple distinct entities, each with its own tone, its own accent, its own personality. They mock the family. They describe events from the past that David could not possibly know. They reveal secrets held by family members, intimate details never spoken aloud in the child's presence. The worst moments arrive when David returns to himself. In these brief windows of clarity, The boy who entered an empty house just weeks ago surfaces long enough to weep, to beg, to plead with his family to make it stop. He describes what happens when he loses control. He describes the sensation of being pushed down inside himself, of watching his own body move and speak without his permission, of the voices that surround him in the darkness behind his own eyes. He tells his mother he is tired. He tells her he wants it to end. He asks her if he is going to perish. She holds him and promises him he will not. She does not know if she is telling the truth. Ed and Lorraine Warren arrive at the Glatzel home after receiving desperate calls from the family and their priest. They come equipped with recording devices, cameras, religious artifacts, and decades of experience investigating cases of demonic oppression and possession. What they witness in the Glatzel household confirms their worst suspicions. This is not a haunting. This is not a poltergeist case. This is genuine demonic possession, and it is progressing at an alarming rate. Lorraine Warren, whose clairvoyant abilities have been documented throughout her investigative career, counts over 40 distinct episodes that she classifies as full manifestations. The entity demonstrates unusual power. Most possession cases begin with oppression, a gradual wearing down of the victim's spiritual defenses. David experienced almost immediate and total invasion. Ed Warren documents everything. He records the voice changes, the physical transformations, the violent reactions David displays when presented with crucifixes, holy water, blessed medals. The boy hisses and recoils from sacred objects. He spits. He curses in languages he has never studied. Ed recognizes the patterns from dozens of previous cases, but he also recognizes something unique here, something more powerful than the typical demonic manifestations he has encountered. He contacts the Catholic Church and begins the lengthy process of requesting formal exorcism. Multiple priests are brought to the home to pray over David, to perform preliminary rites, to assess whether the church will authorize the full ritual of exorcism. Aunt Cheyenne Johnson watches the boy he has come to care for like a younger brother suffer through episodes that grow worse with each passing week. Ann is 24 years old, engaged to David's sister Debbie, planning a future that now seems impossible while this horror consumes the family. He attends the prayer sessions. He holds David when the episodes subside. He watches priests pray and witnesses the entity mock them through David's voice. During one particularly violent session, when David's body thrashes with such force that it takes 5 men to restrain him, when the voices pour from the child's mouth in a stream of blasphemy and threats, Arn Johnson makes a decision that will alter the course of his entire life. He steps forward. He speaks directly to the entity. His voice cuts through the chaos in the room. He issues a challenge that makes Ed Warren shout in protest. Arn tells the entity to leave David. He tells it to take him instead. He repeats the challenge 3 times. Take me, leave the boy, take me instead. The priests understand what he is doing. They try to stop him. Ed Warren physically attempts to pull him away. Arn stands his ground. The challenge hangs in the air. David's body goes suddenly still. The room falls silent. Then David begins to weep, the child's own voice returning, calling for his mother. The weeks following that night bring gradual improvement to David's condition. The possessions become less frequent. The episodes lose their intensity. The voices retreat. Multiple exorcisms are performed by Catholic priests with the Warrens present and assisting. David Glatzel slowly returns to himself. The entity's grip loosens. By late 1980, David's most severe episodes have ceased entirely. The family begins to hope. The Warrens remain cautious. Ed Warren notes changes in Arn Johnson, subtle shifts that worry him. Arn experiences moments he cannot remember. People close to him notice a coldness that was not present before. Debbie mentions episodes where Arn seems absent, his eyes empty, his personality shifted into something unfamiliar. February 16, 1981, arrives 5 months after David's recovery. Arn Johnson and Debbie Glatzel have moved into their own apartment. Arn works as a tree surgeon. He maintains good relationships with his employer, his landlord Alan Bono, and everyone in his life. He has no history of violence, no history of aggression, no criminal record. On this February afternoon, a dispute arises. Witnesses later describe what happens as sudden and inexplicable. Arn attacks Alan Bono with a knife. The assault lasts seconds. When it ends, Alan Bono lies mortally wounded. He passes away shortly after. Arn Johnson stands covered in his landlord's remains with no clear memory of what just occurred. The arrest follows immediately. The investigation reveals no obvious motive. Character witnesses describe Arn as gentle, kind, incapable of such violence. His defense attorneys contact Ed and Lorraine Warren. They review the documentation from David Glatzel's case. They note the timeline, the challenge Arn issued during the exorcism, the subsequent changes in his behavior. They make a decision unprecedented in American legal history. They will argue demonic possession as a defense. The motion is filed. The media descends. The case that began with a child exploring an empty house transforms into a trial that makes international headlines. The court proceedings captivate the nation throughout 1981. Ed Warren testifies. He presents evidence from the Glatzel case. He describes demonic possession as a real phenomenon supported by religious tradition and documented cases spanning centuries. The judge rules that demonic possession cannot be accepted as a legitimate defense in a court of law. The jury never hears the full testimony about David Glatzel's possessions or Arn's challenge to the entity. Arn Cheyenne Johnson is convicted of first-degree manslaughter. He receives an 8-year sentence. Debbie Glatzel waits for him. She visits him throughout his incarceration. When he is released after serving 5 years, she marries him. They remain together. The possession of David Glatzel generates controversy that persists decades after the events of 1980 and 1981. David Glatzel, now an adult, makes public statements disputing aspects of how the case was presented. Other family members and witnesses who were present during the possessions stand by the documented account. Gerald Brittle publishes The Devil in Connecticut in 1983, detailing the case from the Warren perspective. The book faces legal challenges. The case file remains one of the most complex in the Warren archives. In 2021, The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It brings the case back into public consciousness, introducing new generations to the story of a boy who encountered something evil in an empty house and the man who offered himself in exchange for the child's freedom. The questions raised by the Glatzel case resist easy answers. Was David Glatzel genuinely possessed by a demonic entity that later transferred to Arn Johnson? Was the possession real and the murder coincidental? Were the manifestations the result of trauma, mental illness, or mass hysteria? The documentation exists. The witness testimony exists. The exorcisms were performed by ordained Catholic priests. The trial records are public. Alan Bono perished. Arn Johnson served time. David Glatzel survived. What actually occurred in that rental house in Brookfield, Connecticut, during the summer of 1980 remains a matter of faith, interpretation, and belief. If you found this case compelling, subscribe to Vanishing Roads for more documented paranormal investigations from around the world. This story was created with AI assistance based on documented case files. All events reference real investigations and reported incidents.